Good morning, everybody. So we are at the beginning of Parak Dalet, chapter 4, at the bottom of 49b. Um, and we're going to discuss the specifics of worship of various Avodah Zarah and how to identify. Well, you'll see. That's easier just to get into it. Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Shalosh Avanim Zu B'tzad Zu B'tzad Markolis. So there's this idol called Markolis, and the way it's worshipped is to throw stones at it. So you find a statue, and there's three stones next to it. Asuros. Those are forbidden to use because we can assume that they were thrown there for that purpose, for avodah zarah. Ushtayim mutaros. If you find only two stones, then and two and less, then it's okay. The Gemara will explain, but what seems apparent, what seems the simple understanding of this is that those are there randomly. They would not have been thrown as part of the avodah zarah. The rabbis say, "Sheniros imo asuros." If it looks like they were thrown there, they're in such a position, perhaps, that they appear to have been thrown there for avodah zarah, they are forbidden. Shein niros imo mutaros, and that they don't appear to have been thrown there. Maybe they're a little further away. It's not clear exactly how you would tell, but if it appears that they weren't. Thrown there for avodah zarah purposes, then they're fine. But if it looks like they were, they seem to be saying that how close it is to the idol is more significant than the number of stones. Um, okay, so Bishlam Rabban, I understand the rabbis kasavre odin lishvarim. Um, so the rabbis would hold um, that that broken parts of an idol are they're forbidden for use. We discussed this yesterday. Um, so therefore, Neros emo, if the stones appear to be, they're close enough that they appear to be, maybe they were chipped off of the idol itself. Maybe they were chipped off of the idol, then asuros. Shein Neros emo mutaros, but they're further away. It couldn't have come from the idol itself. El Rabbi Shmuel like a savar. What does Rabbi Shmuel hold? If he holds that pieces of the idol are still forbidden, afilu tartinami litzar. So what do you care what the number is? If it's chipped off the idol, then it should be forbidden. But if he holds that pieces of the idol are not forbidden in the first place, afilu chasnami lo. So what does it matter if there are three or more? The number shouldn't count. So Amar Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Amar Yochanan, Yitzchak answers, "B'yadua shenashu mimenu." We know, you can tell that the stones fell from the chips of stone fell from the idol. So divrei hakol asuros. Then everybody agrees, you can't use it. So pieces of the idol, no good. Even if you say that a broken idol pieces are not worshipped, and so they're not forbidden. That's if that's not the way of the um, of the um, of the idol to be worshipped. But here with Markulis, where it's um, these stones are naturally kind of separate from it, the way it's constructed. That's the way it's worshipped. So kiplige, so then then that's those stones would certainly be forbidden. So hiplige bistama, when you don't know where the stones came from. And b'makarovos name, um, and when the stones are very close to the idol, fall could have fallen from the idol. Divrei hakol asuros, and everybody holds they're forbidden. Keep the argument is if they're further away. So now we understand the Mishnah. But wait a minute, the Mishnah says next to the idol. right? So like next to the idol means close by. My B'tzad, what does it mean next to B'tzad? Arba amos tidei, within 4 amos. So that could be far enough. It could be the Mishnah could still be including a space where it's far enough away that you don't know where it came from. Um, Rabbi Shmuel Sarah Osim Marklis Katan B'tzad Marklis Gadol. So, so what's Rabbi Shmuel? So continuing to understand Rabbi Shmuel. Um, Rabbi Shmuel holds that it would be common for the idol worshippers to construct a small marculus near a large marculus. Shalosh Tadamian Lamarculus. So then the stones that are nearby, they might have been an Avodah Zarah themselves. So Shalosh Tadamian Lamarculus, if there are three stones and they look like a marculus collection asuros, then they're forbidden. Shtayim mutaros, but two, which couldn't possibly look like a marculus, it's not enough to make a new marculus. That's okay. Rabbanos Sarei Enos Marculus Katam and Marculus Gadol. No, we're not talking about small ones near large ones. Loshna Shalosh, Loshna Shtayim, doesn't matter, two or three. Nirosimo Asuros, Shein Nirosimo Mutaros. If they're close enough that they may have come from the idol, then they're forbidden. If they're far enough, then they're not. Okay, so now we have a little bit of understanding of the machlokas. Amar Mar, if we know that these stones came chipped off of the idol itself, everybody says that they're usr, that they're forbidden. Urminu. So they asked, Avanim shenashru marculus, stones that fell off of Marculus idol. Nirosimo asuros. If it's close by, if it appears to be from the idol, then it's forbidden. Shein nirosimo mutaros. If not, then it's permitted. Rabbi Shmuel Omer shalosh asuros shtayim mutaros. Rabbi Shmuel says it matters of the number. Three are forbidden and two are okay. Um, so. So this price is saying where you already know, like this is talking about where you know that it came from Avanim Shanashrin and Markulis, that it came off of the idol. So the argument is not, as we try to explain, whether whether it may have come from the idol or not. We know it came from the idol. So Amar Rava lo temasha nashru ala emasha nimtzu. Now we're going to rewrite that brisa. Not that we know that they fell off; they're found, so it's exactly the same as our Mishnah. Okay, so Rabbi Shmuel Shtein Mutaros. Does Rabbi Shmuel really hold that we're challenging the idea in the Mishnah that Rabbi Shmuel says that if there are only two stones, it's okay. V'atanya, we have Rabbi Shmuel Omer Shtein b'tfisalo asuros. If there are two stones, if they're like close enough for the idol to grab, as it were. So in other words, they're quite close. If there's two, then they're still forbidden. Shalosh afil muruchachos asuros, and if there are three, then they're even if they're far from the idol, it's still a problem, still forbidden. So here, Rabbi Shmuel is saying specifically. That the number is what counts. 1 second. Oh, we wanted to say that Rabbi Shmuel permitted two stones if it's far enough away, but here Rabbi Shmuel is clearly saying that the distance doesn't matter; it's the number. Amarava lokasha. Kan b'tfisa achas, kan b'shtei tfisos. The brisa where Rabbi Shmuel says even two are forbidden, that's when they're very close. Like the idol, so to speak, could easily reach out and grab the stones. Kan b'shtei tfisos, but in our Mishnah, where he's talking about where he says that two stones are permitted, it's a little further. So it's still within reaching distance, but the markulis would have to stretch out, maybe, double his reach or something like that. What are we talking about? The ika govha beni ubeni. When, if there's like a little embankment between the stones and the margulis, so as the crow, well, so it would be harder to reach it for the for the statue to reach it, as it were. Umarkulis ki haigavna mihave. So we've said that a marketplace needs at least three stones, right? So imagine like a pyramid, right? Two on the bottom and one on top. Um, is that really a marketplace? Vatanya, Elohein Avne Beis Kulis. This is how they built the Kulis idol. Achos mikan v'achos mikan v'achos al. Two on the bottom, like next to each other, and one on top of them. Um, um, 1 second. So why is this a problem? Is this how marketplace is constructed? Now we talk about coolies. Let's see what Rashi says on this. Okay. The question is, Rabbi Yochanan's answer or understanding of Rabbi Shmuel understood that if there are three stones, then it doesn't matter how they're, how they are, where they are in relation to each other, they're forbidden. But here, so if we're assuming it's a case of constructing a smaller Marculus next to a larger one, so where's the structure, right? There's three random stones here. Why do you consider that an idol? Where this brisa, which I guess there's, oh, Markulis and base Kulis is the same, right? Of course. It's this Bryson specifies it has to be in a pyramid, or that's how it was built in a pyramid shape. So if they're not in a pyramid shape, why would that be a problem? Amarava Kitanya hi beikar Markulis. That's talking about the main Markulis. But if you're taking little pieces and constructing smaller ones around it, um, then they don't have to be arranged in the pyramid. The small ones could be arranged in any configuration.
So
Okay.
when Rashi says Ikar Markelus Techilato, he says that's
Yeah,
in
like the beginning,
initially.
like the
But then
initial
he
one,
says
the main one.
Katan Nasa Betzad Gadol. So you write in small
Yeah,
ones
for
next to
that,
that.
Odin lo kolduhu. Then the stones can be in any configuration. Doesn't have to be in a pyramid. Only the original, like main one. Um, I in my mind's eye, I can see a Calvin and Hobbes comic where Calvin builds all these snowmen, right? And so like there's the big snowman, and then there's a little one. In that case, they all have the same configuration, though. Never
So
mind.
this one doesn't have to, right? What's he when he says Iker, that's in the beginning. But then he says when he says
Ikar is the main one, right?
right.
But you're suspecting that these stones around it are little ones, and you can suspect that even if they're not in the markerless configuration, because only the main one needs to be in this configuration to give it validity.
So if it's not the main one, they can put the small one next to the big one and
Yeah,
so
then
forth.
it could be any collection of three stones could be a markerless.
Well, it mentions two. About Katan Anasa Betzad Gadol, and the third one is it just seems like they're talking about two here, Katan and Gadol.
Yeah, the two idols, but each one is made of three rocks.
Oh, this is two idols.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the main Markleys, the main idol, and then there's some secondary ones around it. But the secondary ones could just be three stones, in a triangle or something, or just a collection of three stones, not having to be in a pyramid shape.
We're talking about a large marculus and a small marculus here, according
Yeah,
to Rashi.
right, exactly.
Uh-huh.
So the large one you can identify because it has to be in this particular shape. But the smaller ones don't have to be in any particular shape, and that's why Rabbi Shmuel says if there's three, you have to assume it's a small marculus. Bei Yanai Malcha, Charuv. The palace of Yanai the king was ruined, was destroyed. Also of the Odei Kochavim, Okimule Marculus. So they took it over and put a marculus in it. Also of the Kochavim Achrine, the Lo Parshel Malchus. So another group of idolaters came. They didn't worship Marculus. Shaklinu, say they removed the stones. V'chipu bahen drachim ustartos. And they used the stones to pave streets. So, what's the status of these streets? Can you walk on those stones? Ika Rabbanon de Parshe. Some of the rabbis, kept away from those roads. Vika Rabbanon de lo Parshe, and some didn't keep away. They were fine with using the roads. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Benon shel kedoshim mahalech alein. Um, this son of holy people, in other words, he's referring to some specific rabbi, Mahalech Aleim, he walks on them, Vanan Nifresh man. So, like, we have to be, why should we be more firm than the rabbi? And Manu Benan Shel Kedoshim, who is he referring to? Rabbi Menachem, Rabbi Simai. V'amai Karle Benan Shel Kedoshim. Why did he call him by this nickname, Son of the Holy? Tafilu b'tzursa dezuzo lo mistakel. He wouldn't even look at a coin that had an image of a person or maybe of a Zarah. He wouldn't even look at a coin so as not to encounter any vestige of Avodah Zarah. Now, my Tamadam de Parish, why would you avoid using the stones? Sarala, ki hadi amar of Gidal amar of Chia bar Yosef amar Rav, it holds like Rav Gidal. Minayin lati krovas avodas kacharim she'en la betela olamis. How do you know that an offering to an idol can never be decommissioned? Shenemar vayitsamdu lepal pa'or vayachlu zivchei mesim. We encountered this pasuk before. They joined with Baal Peor and they ate sacrifices of the dead. So ma meis ein lo b'teil yalam, by referring to the dead, like the dead don't come back to life. Afti kroves avodas kochavim ein lo b'teil yalam. So anything to do with avodah zarah also can't be reversed. If it once an avodah zarah, always an avodah zarah. That's why you shouldn't walk on the road. Mandala parish. Amar, what about the view that it's okay to walk on the stones? Beina ke'ein panim. Like, when would we say that it's forbidden? When it's being used as an avodah zarah, veleka, but here it's being used as a street, right? So it is um, so it's unclear if this means like the fact that it sounds to me like it's the fact that it's being used as a street indicates that it's no longer being used as avodah zarah.
Well,
Um,
Rashi says v'achin shebemikdash. These were things that are used for sacrifice in the temple, and certainly
yeah,
that these stones on the street aren't being used inside the temple, right?
yeah. So zvachim shavamikdash hu David tikrovas. Yeah, like when do we say something is like dead? In other words, it can't be reversed when it's in an offering in the temple that can't be reversed. But now we're talking about it was deconstructed and used for something else, so it can be decommissioned. Um, what I don't quite get is like usually don't we say that the idol itself can be decommissioned if it's deconstructed by the Ovdei Zarah themselves. But
Right.
here it seems like the confounding factor may be that the second group of idolaters they didn't worship this particular idol. For them, it was completely secular, right? Um,
But they
so
destroyed it.
right. But it wasn't like until now I've understood that if the same person or people who worship this thing now take it apart, that indicates that they no longer believe it is it's a deity, right? But
I
here we're
thought I
talking about a
understood that it's
different
that.
group comes along.
No,
Different group comes along. Yeah.
I thought we studied before. we learned earlier that the Jew cannot
Yeah, that's correct.
nullify it, so that you can ask another. Wasn't there a Gemara where they could ask another Gentile to come and ask him, can
Yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah.
So this would be asking another Gentile who's not even related to the first Gentile.
Yes, that's true. But like the whole theory was to me, the way I understood it was the whole theory was that since this person who formerly believed it was an idol now has taken it apart, it shows that he doesn't believe it's an idol anymore, and that's what makes it okay. But in this case, the people who first believed it was a deity, they still believe it. Somebody else came along, not Jewish indeed, and over the Avodah Zarah. So it seems like they have the power, to say, "Oh, this is not a deity," even though they're not the ones that originally considered it a deity.
I don't think I don't see a problem with that because if a person finds a coin on the ground or whatever, let's say a coin, and you see it, and the way I thought we learned it before is that to him it seems like a voda zora. Let's say the coin is whatever it is, and you find it, he can't decommission. He finds another. Can you calls another Gentile? Can you decommission the first person who dropped it or left it? He's long gone.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so, all right, I'm corrected. Amar Rebbe Barabba. Ikla Rabba Bar Yirmiel Asrin. Rabba came to our town. Vasav Aise Masnisa Bidei, and he brought this teaching with him. Oved Kochavim Shehevi Avanim Min Amarkalis. If a non-Jew brings a stones from a markalis, v'chipav and drachim ustratios, and he uses them to pave streets. Mutaros, that's fine. You can walk on the street. Yisrael shevi avanim in Amarkalis, but if a Jew brings them, v'chipav and drachim ustros, and paves the street with them asuros, then they're forbidden. V'leis nagar v'lo bar nagar di parkine, and there's nobody can understand this brisa. Um,
No one can understand it.
um,
What is that? What's the point what does that mean?
so we're going to see what does that mean? I mean, it seems pretty clear to me, right? Amar
Well,
Rosh Hashanah says,
Nagar is
what's
a
he talking about?
carpenter, right? A
Yeah,
Nagar is a
it's a
car.
metaphor. It's a metaphor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Um, Amar Rav Sheshes, Ana lo nagar v'ana lo bar nagar, Ana ufarik nale. I'm not a carpenter. I'm not a Talmud Chacham, but I can understand the brisa. My kushale. What problem did he have? To Rav Gidal. It's the ruling of Rav Gidal, who said that you can't. Um, yeah, Rav Gidal was the one that said that you can't. These are that you can't use these stones, right? So, Beina Kain Panim Beleka. Um,
Because they're not part of the temple. They're
right,
not offerings.
right. So that's why, like, the stones are not in the temple anymore. So, that's why, um,
You can use them.
yes, that's why you can use them. Now we're to Rabba. Ikla Rabba bar Yirmiyah Lasrin. Rabba came to our town. Vasa Avaisim Biyade. He brought this teaching. Maslin umazamhin b'shvis. You can take worms out of a tree, like treat a diseased tree, or like smear some oil, some kind of oil on it, some medicinal kind of thing on it. During Shemitah, ve'en maslin mazanim b'moed, but you can't do it on Chol Moed. Kan v'kan, and in either time, ein megazmin, you can't prune it. V'sachin shemen lagazum, and you can oil up a branch for for purposes of productive purposes for the tree. Ben b'moed ben b'shvis, whether on Chol Moed or Shemitah. V'leis nagar v'lo bar nagar de parkine. And I can't understand, like, what's the difference between these two activities? Ravina, Anala Nagar, Anala Bar Nagar, I'm not a Talmud Chacham, Umfarkinala, but I can understand the Brisa. My Kakashale, what's Rabba's problem with the Brisa? Ilema Moed Ashvis Kakashale. If you want to say, like, why does he distinguish between Chol Moed and Shemitah? The rules should be the same. Mashna Shvis Ashari Mashna Moed Deos, or uh, why is something allowed during Shemitah but forbidden on Chol Moed? Midame. But like, are they the same? Shvis Malachas or Achmana? In Shvis, the Torah says you can't work on the field. tircha shari, but like so that's like productive work, but something that just takes your time and effort is permitted. Like on it's the rules for Chol Hamoed is you like what's the source of the rules? It's not that you're not allowed to work the land. It's fine to work the land, but you are supposed to rest, right? You're supposed to take it easy. You're not supposed to go to work basically on Chol Hamoed. But uh, but moed afilu tirchanami aser. But yeah, chol moed, you're not allowed to do excessive work. Ve'ela zium agizum kakashale. So what you're going to say, like, what's the difference between these two activities? Putting something, zihum is putting something gross on the tree, and gizum is putting something like a regular oil, or oh, that's pruning. What's the difference? Mashna zihum deshoy, mashna gizum dias. Or why these two different types of activities differ in their rules? Midame, you can't compare. Zihum ukme ilana v'shari. Um, Ukmelan Vishari. The idea of putting this some kind of a substance on the tree that's like not curing the tree, that is preserving its health. Gizum avriye lanaviaser. But if you're pruning the tree, then you're actually like improving it. Um, you're doing something constructive. So the difference is between doing something preventive and something what's the opposite of preventive? Interventional. Uh, and it's something that's preventive is okay on Shemitah and Moed, but not something intentional. If you azim kokashale, so maybe what he's asking, like, what's the difference between um, uh, but yeah, what maybe his problem is from another brisa. The Ketani Maslin was Himin B'Shvis. The brisa says you can deworm the tree and you can put something rancid on it during Shemitah or Minu. But we have another Mishnah. Mezamin Sanatios. You can put something rancid on these planted trees, these saplings. V'karchinosan, you can wrap them. V'kotminosan, put ashes on them. V'yoselim batim, and make like wrap them in something to make shelters for them. Umashkinosim, you can water them ad Rosh Hashanah, until Rosh Hashanah of the Shemitah year. Ad Rosh Hashanah in b'shvi slow. So until Rosh Hashanah, it's okay. But on Shemitah itself, you can't. So in other words, before Shemitah starts, you can do it, but it implies that during Shemitah you can't do any of these things. So isn't that contradicting the brisa we're dealing with? So Vidilma could have Ukva Barchama. Okay, so maybe I could answer is by saying that the way that Ukva Barchama answered a similar question. Yamar Ukva Barchama, Trei Kashkushe Havu. There's um, two activities of like digging that you do around olive trees. Chad lavriya ilana v'aser. One type is to improve the tree actively, and that you can't do during Shemitah. V'chad l'stume pile v'shari. The other is to like just to protect the tree. Okay, so and that is permitted during Shemitah. So hafa, hafanami. So here you say the same thing. Um, Trezi hamume have. There's two types of applications of this material on the tree. Chalukume ilane v'shari. One, the types that are just to maintain and preserve the health of the tree is permitted. V'chad lavriya ilane v'yasar. One to improve its health is prohibited. So you could answer the contradiction that way. Maybe okay, so but maybe the difficulty he had was the difference between sicha, which is a similar thing, but it's putting oil on the tree during Shemitah. But we have another brisa that forbids that. Um, Diktani sachin shaman legazum ben b'moed ben shvis. You can put this oil on the tree on Chol Moed and on Shvis. Or minu. That's our brisa, Urminu, but we have another brisa. Sachinas hapagin, umenakvin umefatvinas, and you can put oil on figs that are still growing, and you can make holes in them and kind of stuff them with oil. Ad Rosh Hashanah, until Rosh Hashanah, Shemitah. Ad Rosh Hashanah, in b'shvi slow, but once Shemitah starts, you can't do it. So how come that Mishnah says you can't apply this oil? So midame. So Ravine says It's not the same. Hacha ukme ilana v'shari. In one case, you're just protecting the tree. Hasam patume pira v'yasser. If you're injecting oil into the fig to fatten it up, you're actually improving it, and that's forbidden on Shemitah. Amalei Rav Sama Bered Rav Ashil Ravina. So Rav Sama
Are
said,
we, I thought did we glaze over the distinction between Shemitah and Chol Hamoed? And did we resolve that yet? Because
no, we
earlier we
dealt with
talked
that.
about Shemitah is was permitted with the Zihumei and so forth, but Chol Hamoed was forbidden.
Right, and we identified why, because the rule, the reasons for for the prescribing of activity is different for Shemitah and Moed, right? For Shemitah, it's because you're not supposed to do anything that works the land. On Chol Moed, you also have the issue of additional effort. So that's why there would be a difference between the rules for Shemitah and Chol Moed.
And but for some things, they're they're both forbidden. I mean, they're
Yes, right.
forbidden on both cases, both Shemitah and Chol Hamoed.
Right, but the Bryce identified cases where some things are forbidden on Chol Hamoed but permitted on Shemitah. Well, now we understand why, because the rules have a different
Right.
source. Yeah. Okay, so finally, how are we going to understand this incident? Amalei Osama Ber Dervashel Rabina, Rabba Bar Yirmiyah Sicha Demoed Aziyum Demoed Kakasha. What was his problem? Like, why couldn't he say I can't understand this brisa? Because the rule about allowing sicha, which is smearing oil on the tree during Chol Hamoed, is seems to oppose the first case, which was applying something rancid on Chol Hamoed. So it seems like you're doing the same thing, just with different substances. Michte, let's see. Hayukme, v'hayukme. These are both for the purposes just of preserving the tree, right? So it should be allowed. Um, Maishna, Maishna, Yasser. Why is putting the rancid thing on is permitted, putting the regular oil on is forbidden? That's what he couldn't understand. When he said, I can't understand this price at all, he's saying what he was referring to was what's the difference between these two substances? Like once they're both for the purpose of just preserving the tree, and yet you have different rules. One you're allowed, one you're not allowed. That's what he couldn't understand.
And
Okay.
what's the maskana?
Well, that's we don't really have one. Actually, Rav Yirmiyah's question is like, I can't understand this. We're not really able to explain the problem that he's having with that. But at least we understand his difficulty. And what he was quoting was actually not a brisa, sounds like not an official brisa, but a teaching that somebody brought from place A to place B, came to place B, and he says, here's what I learned when I went to yeshiva in place A. But maybe it wasn't authoritative. It's not being quoted as an authoritative brisa, I think. So when the rabbi in place B heard this, he says, I don't know what this guy's talking about. Like maybe he wasn't listening right in the shir.
But
I'm gonna read them
nonetheless, we do
Yeah.
hold that the rancid material is permitted,
Yes. Well, do
and
we
the
hold that? I don't know.
and the other material is not
Well,
permitted.
that's what I'm saying. I'm not sure if that is if that is la halacha or if that was accepted or not. That seems to be the issue here, right? Is like when Rabbi Yirmiyah says, "I can't understand this at all. It makes no sense." He seems to be discounting the authority of that teaching. So I couldn't tell. It sounds to me like we don't rule that way. We don't accept that as a valid source. I'm
So then,
gonna
what would be the that what would be the result then that we would hold that both substances are permitted or both substances are forbidden?
Well, we would go with the Mishnah that was brought. Um,
If we don't make a distinction of this as.
the second Mishnah was, um, yeah, we have an actual brisa which says Maslina Mazamim B'Shvis. Yeah, no, those are Raminhum, Tios, for Karchanos, yeah, the Brisa that referred to things you can do before Rosh Hashanah, but implied not after Rosh Hashanah, included you even during Shemitah you can't even do the rancid thing on the sapling.
But we're talking here about Cholamoid, right? The last thing.
Yeah, or Chol. Yeah,
So one oil is permitted and one is forbidden, according to Reb Yirmiyah, who didn't
right.
understand it.
But then
But
we
if
have
we don't
another
hold
Mishnah.
that way, then do we hold that both are prohibited or both are permitted? And
Um,
Cholamoid.
Great question. Great question. Well, I think if something is forbidden on Shemitah, it would probably for sure be forbidden on Chol Hamoed, because you have the additional thing of like not even being allowed to expend, significant effort. So if it's forbidden on Shvis, then it would for sure be forbidden on Chol Hamoed, and that's
But we
what
said one of these substances is permitted
that
Shemitah
was in
to
Rav Yirmiyah's in
preserve
the
it.
statement being commented on by Rav Yirmiyah, which Rav Yirmiyah appears to reject. But we have this other source, which this other brisa, which says you can't do neither the rancid stuff nor the rancid, even the rancid stuff you can't apply on Shemitah. So that would, I think, would apply to Chol Hamoed as well.
That's one opinion. Another opinion said that you can apply something to preserve
That
it,
was
but
what
not
Rabbi
to
Yirmiyah was
enhance it.
objecting to. That's what Rabbi Yirmiyah is saying is I don't understand this one. This one makes no sense.
But he's talking about Cholamoid and not Shemitah, right?
No, it's talking about both.
Oh, he is? I
Yeah,
thought he was
that's
saying,
saying that teaching that was brought to Rav Yirmiyah from elsewhere was talking about both. There were some distinctions, right? But the zihum, the rancid stuff was permitted on both, I think. Um, and
well, when he quotes his Rav Sasama Barai, the Rav Ashi, the Ravina Bar Yirmiyah, Sicha the Moed is whom the Moed Kashale. That's where the Kash is regarding Moed. That's what the final thing we learned here. It doesn't mention Shemitah in that section. So is Yirmiyah objecting also to Shemitah? I mean, it seems that he's just talking about Moed here.
well, in Shemitah they agree, right? That they're both. Oh, wait a second. Um, um, one second.
I think I'm getting a little bit lost in the Shaklavataria about which one is which. But it seems to me at the end, Yirmiyah is talking only about Moed, that he doesn't understand why one oil is mutar and the other is asur. He says, I can't understand this. He doesn't mention Shemitah in the last section there.
Right. That's what puzzled him about this teaching. Right, was the difference between the two activities on Moed. That's what puzzled him.
Right, I understand that, but he doesn't mention Shemitah. So
So
what does he hold regarding Shemitah? I don't remember what he holds regarding Shemitah.
um,
Does he accept
it doesn't. It's not clear. It's not clear.
that's not clear either. Okay, so then maybe he would accept that something that is
Maybe so.
done to
Yeah.
preserve the tree during Shemitah is okay, but not to enhance it, right? So
Yeah.
so that's then that has no bearing on his lack of understanding regarding Moed. So then we don't know whether both would be permitted or both would be forbidden ultimately,
Right.
according to anybody.
Right. Right.
Okay.
We've only been focusing on what did he not like about this teaching, and we found it, but it's not clear what he felt about the rest of the report.
All right. So we don't ultimately we don't. Maybe there's a halacha somewhere, the Rambam or
No
something.
doubt. No doubt there is. Okay, let's go on. Amar Ravina Marav. Avos kacham she'ovni osa b'makel. If you have an idol that the way it is worshipped is with a stick. So I don't know, you hit it with a stick, you shake a stick in front of it, but you use a stick to worship the um, idol. Shiber makel b'fanei chayav. So if you take the stick and break it in front of the idol, then if a Jew does this, then it's death penalty. That's actual avodah zarah. Zarah makel b'fanei pater. But if you throw the stick at it, then you're not liable. Um, so uh, one would assume that the distinction is one is the way that the thing is worshipped and the other is not. Only by Larava, so by said, Maishna Shiber Davale Kain Zvicha. Why is breaking the stick considered worship? Because it's like sacrificing, right? The same way you kill an animal as a sacrifice, so you're killing the stick, as it were. Zark Name Havaleke Zrika. But throwing the stick, that's also like worship, because what's another essential aspect of a sacrifice? Zrika Sadam, the throwing of the blood on the altar, right? So shouldn't throwing the stick also be considered a an act of worship? Amalei, Bina Zrika Mishtaberes Vileka. Um, you have, like, when you throw the blood gets scattered all around. It was in a bowl as one bowl of blood, and now it's scattered all around. That's similar to breaking a stick. So if you just throw a stick but it doesn't break, that's not like Zrika Saddam. So that's why it's not considered worship. Esve, so if I ask, Safas la tsoa, what if you provide excrement to an idol? Oh, shenisech lefaneh avit shalmei meraglayim, or you pour urine on it. Chayev, then that is considered worship. You're liable for that. Bishlam avishal meme reglaim ikos rika mishtaberes. Okay, so I understand the urine, pouring urine on it. It's like the blood, right? You've taken a bowl of urine in this case and poured it out. Now it's separated. It's like being broken, as it were. Elatzoa ma'izrika mishtaberes. But if you just apply excrement to the idol, then that's not necessarily breaking it up. So Rav answers, but so halacha. We're talking about not solid excrement, but more liquidy, where it actually breaks as you apply it. Okay, so indeed, if you applied something that didn't break, that wouldn't be considered an act of worship. Seems pretty strange.
Wait a minute.
Um,
We had it the Gemara a few days ago, maybe the end of last week. We talked about this here, and I think David was giving the shear, and this idea of giving of of Torah, the feces that applied to only specific idols. There were other idols where I think I raised that question. He said those idols that's not a shabach to them. It's not considered idol worship. This other, but only certain idols would it be with this um defecating on the idols or so forth be considered a worship. So
yeah, but look at the top Rashi on Nun Aleph. Chayav afilu ein avodah b'kach, even if it's not the way it's regularly worshipped. Okay, so if it is the way it's regularly worshipped, then certainly you're chayav. But do it to another idol that is not accustomed to being smeared with excrement. It's still considered, if it's loose and it breaks up, that's still considered avoda.
now this is pretty
You
bizarre.
would It's pretty bizarre because you would think that is rather disrespectful, shall we say? If that's not the way to worship it, if you smear feces on something, that seems to be a sign of disrespect. But I guess this is categorized as something that is an act, in some cases, in some situations, an act of avodah zarah. Um, and so if you so the form of this activity is always considered avodah zarah if it's done to any idol. Now, Lema Ketanai, maybe this dispute is, at least according to Rava, right?
We
But Lema
should bring this
Ketanai,
back to the other Gemara we learned last week, where it didn't. We seemed to learn that it didn't apply it only to certain idols. Did the application of feces or defecating apply?
yeah.
This is
So let's see how this plays out in another case. Lema Ketanai, maybe this is the same as the Machakas Tanaim. Shachat la chagav. What if you slaughter a locust as a sacrifice to an idol? Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yehuda says that's avodah zarah. Chachamim potrim, but the rabbis say no. So my love maybe this is the argument. Marzavar amrinon kein zvicha. Doesn't matter if it's a locust or a sheep, right? If you slaughter something for an idol, Rabbi Yehuda says um, that is avodah zarah. Of Marsavar, but the rabbis say lo amrinon kein zvicha. No, it's a locust. So if this is not an idol that is worshipped through locusts, then it's meaningless. Ella Kain Panim. Um, it, one
that's what
second.
we
Kain
learned over the
Zvicha. Ella Kain
temple.
Panim. You don't. It has to be similar to something that similar to our avoda. Um, so Rav, who said that breaking a rod is the only thing you're liable for, it follows Rabbi Yehuda, and Shmuel, who says that even throwing the rod follows the Rabban. Of course, it's not necessarily the same machlokas. Both Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, um, they um, that you don't say that you're liable if it's similar to slaughtering. Elakaim pnim binan. It has to be that an activity like avoda in the Beis Hamikdash, v'shani chagav. But what's so they all agree about that. So why does Rabbi Yehuda say slaughtering a locust is avoda zara? Isn't that not like in the Beis Hamikdash? So ho v'tzavar odoma tzavar behema, because a locust, the way you slaughter it, or its neck, maybe its respiratory and circulation systems, he considered similar to an animal that you would sacrifice in the temple. So that's why even sacrificing a locust, even though it's a locust, is similar to slaughtering a cow. And that's why it is forbidden. And what the rabbis say, no, what are you talking about? A locust is a locust, a cow is a cow. You slaughter a locust, it doesn't really, that's not considered a general avoda. Okay, so we'll stop here for today and pick it up again tomorrow.
You mentioned Rav and Shmuel. I don't recall how they
Oh
got
yeah,
into
I'm sorry. It was
how they
um,
get into this.
not Shmuel. I'm sorry. It was Rabbi Huda Marav. It was just the same. Yeah, there was no Shmuel arguing with him, but we're discussing the opinion of Rav. Yeah, sorry about that. I misspoke.
All right, I listen. I don't not sure that I catch everything, but I didn't hear Shmuel before. That's
Yeah,
all.
yeah, that was my mistake. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Have a good day, everybody.